Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Watching the news last night was interesting. I mean, how else can you posit this? It was an interesting exercise in finally realizing, in some respects, that I was the dog in the meme surrounded by flames. This is fine. This is totally fine. Seriously, we're okay. Speaking of fires, there are wildfires raging in the northern suburbs of Los Angeles. Tens of thousands of people have been displaced. Many will lose their homes. There is no rain in the forecast. Some strong winds, 60-plus mile-an-hour winds, pushing from the east, southwest, just literally fanning those flames in California. And that was the lead story last night as I'm watching NBC Nightly News. I'm a Lester Holt guy. Lester gets me for half an hour every night, right? Well, at least 15 minutes. Sometimes the back half is a lot of fluff, and I just skip on. I've got other things to deal with. And then you posit that with Donald Trump's press conference. He held a news conference yesterday, wide-ranging subjects, and that's just his opening monologue. My God, the weave, he calls it. And we'll go over that a little bit. And then you have Mark Zuckerberg's announcement yesterday that Meta has decided to abandon any notion of responsibility in fact-checking disinformation, misinformation, admitting that they have throttled back political discourse in the last 4 to 6 years or so, stifling conversations altogether on hot-button topics like immigration, gender identity, and has put their hands up and said, we're just not going to try and police this anymore. Whatever you post, and we'll let the community figure it out. He's taking a page from Elon Musk's Twitter X platform, which I wouldn't so much disagree with, except we live in a polarized, hyper-partisan society, and any one of us can go on Wikipedia, for example, and change what's on Wikipedia. Who's to say that as we continue to see a society continually disinformed, misinformed, we're watching now as entire generations of voters in this country become more and more deluded by disinformation and misinformation. This show, we have chronicled on this show the decades of strategizing and literally disinforming millions of people, whether it be through talk radio, opinion columns, cable news outlets, the church. We've chronicled that from the 1950s to now, and it's paid off, I suppose, for a political movement. That same political movement that seeks to bury as much history as possible so as to cover the tracks of past white nationalist, Judeo-Christian, evangelical conservatives. Can you even call it that? I tweeted yesterday as I'm watching Jimmy Carter's procession in Washington, D.C., and just listening to more and more stories of Carter's life and his impact on the global community and American politics. And it just dawned on me, Jimmy Carter is probably the last Christian conservative president of the United States. To date, anyway. Make no mistake, Ronald Reagan wasn't all that religious. George H.W. Bush might have been somewhat religious. I question his conservative bona fides. George H.W. Bush, yes, I believe he was a religious person. I believed he thought he was a Christian and conservative. Donald Trump, obviously not. Barack Obama, to some extent, a Christian, but obviously not a conservative. Joe Biden, a Christian, not a conservative. I believe Jimmy Carter was probably the last the true Christian conservative president this country's ever had. Anyway, as I'm watching the nightly news last night, it dawned on me. This is beyond Orwellian. This is reality. In my lifetime, we've gone from thousands of newspaper owners to a mere handful owning most of what's left of the newspaper industry. We had thousands of radio station owners, now reduced to a handful. And while we have hundreds of television station options, most of them are owned, again, by a handful of large corporations. Our news offerings are actually less than they were 30, 40 years ago. A handful of people now have full impact on how the news is delivered to the American public. Social media used to be a way for us to have broader conversations and have multitudes of sources. And in some respects, the advent of the internet actually brought that on. Social media, the vehicle to deliver it. And younger generations are now using social media as their primary news source. And even that is sort of breaking down generationally. Older Americans rely more on Facebook. There is some middle ground between Twitter X, Blue Sky. I don't know, what are the others that are? I think Blue Sky is sort of taken on that. Threads gave it a go. Instagram. Some people actually do get their news from Instagram. And the youngest of the social media partakers are probably getting a lot of their news from TikTok. And even in the social media landscape, we all know who owns Twitter X. But Threads, Instagram, Facebook, all owned by Meta. So if you thought, well, on the heels of Mark Zuckerberg's announcement yesterday that they're going to eliminate fact-checking and leave it up to the wild, wild west of us, I'll just stop using Facebook. I'll just exclusively stick to Instagram and Threads. Guess what? They're Meta. I'll just go to Blue Sky. Okay, that's fine. But again, that's a sort of an echo chamber, just left-wing echo chamber. And I would caution you against doing that. I love Blue Sky. I am a recent convert. I enjoy it immensely. There is civil and substantive dialogue happening on Blue Sky, but I'm biased. I don't want to find myself being the left-wing version of the right-wing mind that is exclusively watching Fox News and talk radio, and then one day waking up and realizing that I've been misled. I'm not saying that that's happening on the left, but I don't want to be that. So I don't want to rely on just one source or exist in one social media environment. I'm still on Twitter X at RonShowATL, by the way, on that, and on Blue Sky, Facebook as well, Threads, Instagram, at RonShowATL. Because I like knowing what the other side's thinking. Sometimes when I'm driving around, I'm going to listen to talk radio. I want to know what they're thinking. I'm often blown away by it, but I still want to know. I'm not going to abandon Facebook either. Got to fight the good fight. For me, I'm just kind of blown away at the change, because after the 2016 election, Mark Zuckerberg, with the super short haircut back then, looking like the space alien, confessed that Facebook had taken their eye off the ball, that they weren't paying attention to the disinformation that was coming in from foreign adversaries, and that they had an impact. They're not doing anything, had an impact on the outcome of the election, and what that had wrought the nation and eventually the world as a result. Zuckerberg testifying before House subcommittees, admitting that Facebook had a responsibility to do better when it came to misinformation and disinformation. And then yesterday, Mark Zuckerberg goes, you know what? We're just going to get out of this. Donald Trump doesn't really like the whole fact-checking thing. Well, he didn't name drop Donald Trump, but Donald Trump basically said, yeah, I think my threat to put him in jail for life had an impact on it. He literally said that when a reporter asked him, do you think Mark Zuckerberg's announcement had something to do with your threat? And Donald Trump just kind of shrugged and said, yeah, probably. Orwellian stuff. Anyway, we'll dive into the Zuckerberg video in just a second. It's The Ron Show on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn. By the way, I had a great conversation yesterday on The Ron Show with Marilyn Marks from the Coalition for Good Governance. Find that wherever you podcast or listen at ronshowatl.com. Mark Zuckerberg taking to his social media platforms yesterday to announce no more fact-checking and a few other little nuggets that seem to be bending of the knees towards MAGA and Donald Trump. Let's listen in.
Hey everyone. I want to talk about something important today because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years.
Mm-hmm. Notably the fact that you got threatened with life imprisonment, but go on.
There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously.
Okay, all of those are bad things, but so is disinformation. Willful misinformation. Confusing and deluding a public into thinking that water ain't wet, black is white, that dark is daylight. The vaccines don't work. Back to Zuckerberg.
And I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms.
Reducing mistakes, fine. I'm absolutely for that. I'm not even going to sit here and argue that I'm against the whole community notes thing, but you can't absolve yourself of being the referee in the midst of an argument or when one side has completely lied about something. You can't let that stand, can you? Are you just deciding you're out of this completely? Let society figure it out. The society that one political ideology, one movement of this country wants to ensure that a full accounting of our history isn't taught because, eek.
More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US.
Why just the US?
After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy.
It is.
We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US.
Sorry, I have to stop there because, yes, I guess fact checkers are biased. I've said this all along. Facts, data, math, science, logic, they all have a liberal bias. That's not something that the left needs to address. That's something the right should be addressing. And oh my God, how embarrassing that he has to put in the whole, especially in the US part. That literally is telling us, we the people, and the global community, you guys have been fed so much bullshit over the years that facts offend you. That's so pathetic. Back to Zuckerberg.
So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. Second, we're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far.
Essentially what Zuckerberg is saying, and by the way, does he not just twist with the breeze, like whichever direction the elections seem to go, he seems to cater to. And left or right, it's the wrong thing to do. It seems to show that he is so hell-bent on being liked by who's ever in charge that he'll do whatever he believes those in charge need him to do. That's not... Caving to Donald Trump, to me, is what's so bizarre. Mark Zuckerberg is the third wealthiest person on the planet. more wealthy than Trump. He's more powerful than Trump, if you ask me. And yet he's caving to Donald Trump and the MAGA culture by saying, who needs fact checking? Why stifle anti-trans rhetoric or xenophobic rhetoric? Let's get back to making Facebook the cesspool of political bickering and dickering. I, chief among them, used to be really bad about just constantly bombarding those who followed me on their timeline with political stuff and got very argumentative all the time. Just plenty of minutes and hours wasted on that crap. Facebook has become a more pleasant social media atmosphere in the last 3 or 4 years, and I bet you most of you would agree with me on that. Left, center, right. Well, Mark Zuckerberg says, yeah, we're going to go back to that toxic wasteland where everybody's arguing with each other. Let's see what that does. Oh, and by the way, not only are we going to go back to that divisiveness, we're also going to take the brakes off of all the nonsense. We're just going to let you share Gateway Pundit articles left and right and let you decide if you need to chime in and correct what the Gateway Pundit posted in their articles. Good luck.
So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms.
That's fine. Sharing beliefs is fine, but beliefs aren't always facts. And by the way, this is like self-checkout. Like when I go to self-checkout at Kroger, I feel like I should be invited to the company party because I'm kind of working for them. That's kind of what Meta's doing now. They're letting us work for them.
Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms.
Okay, that's fine.
We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now, we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high-severity violations. And for lower severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action. The problem is that the filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't.
Okay.
So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms. We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down.
Okay, that's fine.
Fourth, we're bringing back civic content. For a while, the community asked to see less politics because it was making people stressed. So we stopped recommending these posts. But it feels like we're in a new era now, and we're starting to get feedback that people want to see this content again. So we're going to start phasing this back into Facebook, Instagram, and Threads while working to keep the communities friendly and positive.
That is going to be the death of those 3 social media platforms, my firm belief. Younger generations don't go to TikTok. They may get their news from TikTok, but they're not going there for it. They're not going there for the political discourse. They're going there to get away from it because it's all over Facebook and Twitter X and Instagram, and I guess to a lesser extent Threads, because I don't think many of them got on Threads to begin with.
Fifth, we're going to move our trust and safety and content moderation teams out of California, and our US-based content review is going to be based in Texas.
I don't understand the point of even saying this, aside from a little bit of a nod to, I don't know, conservative red state America. Why announce that in this conversation? Why are we moving from California to Texas? Is it because of the wildfires? No, it's kind of a nod. Fully believe this.
As we work to promote free expression, I think that it will help us build trust to do this work in places where there is less concern about the bias of our teams. Finally, we're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more.
How about going against foreign adversaries that are poisoning the minds of Americans? Because that is a sabotaging of this country from the outside in as well. He's going to stop doing that and start protecting American companies because capitalism.
The US has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there. Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the US government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further.
He's sitting here caving to the president-elect of the United States who vowed to take down TikTok. Now has changed his mind on that, apparently. Don't really know why. I don't think he's been giving us any national security reasons as to why.
But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it. It'll take time to get this right, and these are complex systems. They're never going to be perfect. There's also a lot of illegal stuff that we still need to work very hard to remove. But the bottom line is that after years of having our content moderation work focus primarily on removing content, it is time to focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our systems, and getting back to our roots about giving people voice. I'm looking forward to this next chapter. Stay good out there, and more to come soon.
Yeah. Back after this.
This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
You know, getting back to how I started the show, watching the nightly news last night, I'd settled in and started watching the lead story, the wildfire, folks just fleeing a northern suburb of Los Angeles in California, obviously. And then the procession of Jimmy Carter's body to be lying in repose at the U.S. Capitol. And I tried to, in my mind, bracket the two of those stories because there is some commonality to it. Jimmy Carter was a huge fan of the great outdoors. Here in Georgia, we have a broad and healthy state park system, and I'm so grateful for that. Anyone who knows me knows that I love to take a good hike, man, and there are so many great state parks just within an hour or two drive of Atlanta, particularly going up towards the mountains. Fantastic parks. Vogel's a great state park. My favorite, honest to God, my favorite, and a hidden gem. Not enough people know about it, and I'm fine with that. Don't you go telling anybody about Cloudland Canyon in northwest Georgia, not far from Chattanooga. I'll be really pissed if that ever gets overrun with tourists because I love that park. But I'm grateful we have it. Jimmy Carter famously put solar panels atop the White House while president in the 1970s, y'all. Meanwhile, wildfires rage in California because we haven't been able to grapple with climate change due to us being a fossil fuel-driven society. And damn, if more than 40 years ago, we didn't have a U.S. president who was trying to do what he could to kind of nudge us away from burning coal and burning fossil fuels and poisoning our air and warming the planet, but we didn't pay any attention to him. I just seeing those two stories sort of back to back, I found interesting. And then you had Mark Zuckerberg do his thing. I've already covered that. And then Donald Trump took the dais at Mar-a-Lago to hold a news conference where he opens up with this long-winded weave. We're going to call that the weave, right? Because that's what he does. He likes to weave when he speaks. And Donald Trump spoke about, bemoaned, I should say, the Biden administration's offshore drilling ban. Going to undo it on day one and drill, baby, drill. He literally said that. It's as if you don't see the whole picture there, bub. Donald, you don't see the whole picture here? Like how these headlines sort of interact with one another. But that wasn't even the most breathtakingly stupid thing that came out of his mouth yesterday. And we're like 2 weeks away from him being president of the United States again for 4 years, where we'll have to collectively hold our breaths. Every time he steps in front of a microphone or holds a press conference, those were must-see television events before, right? It's like a reboot of a TV show that we really thought we loved, enjoyed watching, And now we're like, ugh, this again? It's kind of how we are with the Walking Dead spinoffs, right? They're not nearly pulling in the viewers that the original series did, and it's an old song and dance that we're kind of tired of. But strap in, America. Donald Trump, the reboot, is coming.
We are inheriting a difficult situation from the outgoing administration, and they're trying everything they can to make it more difficult.
You're not inheriting a pandemic and a vaccine rollout that doesn't have any strategy, nor are you inheriting an exit from a theater of war from a president who paid no attention to putting an exit strategy together because he was instead insisting an election was rigged and fomenting an insurrection.
Inflation is continuing to rage.
Below 3.5% since March, below 3% since June. The hell is he talking about?
And interest rates are far too high. And I've been disappointed to see the Biden administration's attempt to block the reforms of the American people and that they voted for. We had a landslide election. We won every swing state. We won the popular vote by millions and millions of people.
Less than 3 million.
Nobody even knows how many people. Millions.
3.
And they're still counting in some areas. You know, they're still counting the vote in some areas. Can you believe this?
They're actually done with that.
What a place. What a horrible place. One of the things we're going to do is we've got to fix the election so that we get honest counts and they get done by
They've been fixing
10 o'clock in the evening or something thereabouts. They have places where they're still counting votes. President Biden's actions yesterday on offshore drilling, banning offshore drilling, will not stand. I will reverse it immediately. It'll be done immediately.
Of course.
And we will drill, baby, drill. And we're going to be drilling in a lot of other locations, and the energy costs are going to come way down. They'll be brought down to a very low level, and that's going to bring everything else down. That's what caused it to go up, along with the ridiculous spending on the Green New scam.
I know.
All this money, trillions of dollars. It's like throwing it right out the window, what they're doing.
Towards red states.
And they're trying to spend so much now. They're just taking money and giving it to anybody that wants it for any project at all if it's certified under the Green New scam. And they don't work, and it's too expensive.
Meanwhile, California's on fire.
You know, they told me that we're going to do everything possible to make this transition to the new administration very smooth. It's not smooth because they're doing that. They're playing with the courts, as you know. They've been playing with the courts for 4 years. Probably got me more votes because I got the highest number of votes ever gotten.
Okay, first of all, not the highest number of votes ever gotten. The guy before you got that, actually. And won by a margin 3 times, I believe, larger than the one that you just won by. Also, we want to talk about smooth transitions. You fomented an insurrection. You sent thousands of Al-Qaeda members to the Capitol to try and stop the counting and certification of electoral votes. Your own vice president's life was imperiled. You want to talk about smooth transitions? What the hell is this guy talking about?
You know, we had a great election, so I guess it didn't work. But even to this day, they're playing with the courts. They have their friendly judges that like to try and make everybody happy on the Democrat side.
Hi, Judge Eileen Cannon has entered the chat. Jesus fuck Christ, do you not have any self-awareness?
It's called lawfare. It's called weaponization of justice, and it's happened at a level nobody's ever seen before. So many. I defeated deranged Jack Smith. He's a deranged individual. I guess he's on his way back to The Hague. And we won those cases. Those were the biggest ones. And the press made such a big deal out of them, but we did nothing wrong. We did nothing wrong on anything. And the people saw that. You know, when they vote when a Republican, it's not easy for a Republican. When the Republican wins the popular vote by millions and wins all 7 of the swing states, people said, well, he could win 4. We won all 7, and we won them by a lot.
I mean, 250,000
That
votes.
tells you we won. That tells, and they've been watching this injustice. I call it the Injustice Department. What they've done is so bad. The whole world has watched that.
I mean, he's kind of not wrong about the Justice Department screwing the pooch. Merrick Garland I mean, how this got to happen, how we let a felon run for office again, get away with what he's gotten away with. No, he's not wrong. The Justice Department has really f***ed things up, but not in the same sort of periphery that we're seeing things in, I guess.
And it took work, but it got me a lot of votes because when explained, I mean, we have a judge in New York who's a very crooked judge.
Not the one in Florida, though, huh?
I'm under a gag order. I can't even talk about aspects of the case that are
Here he is.
the most vital aspects. I'm under a gag. Do you know that I'm the president-elect of the United States of America? I'm a former very successful president. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We had borders that were sealed and beautiful. We had everything was good. We had no wars.
Oh, COVID?
We defeated ISIS.
Did you?
We had no wars. Now I'm going into a world that's burning with Russia and Ukraine.
That's your guy.
With Israel. You took a look at that attack.
Who is your guy?
October 7th, the attack on Israel.
And how are you
with
going
the
to stop
horrible way they got out? Not the fact that they got out. I would have been out before them. But we would have been out of Afghanistan with dignity and strength as opposed to looking like a bunch of fools with 13 dead and many, many badly, horrifically injured. Nobody ever talks about them.
See, this is where Biden, Harris, and Democrats are to blame for not the exit strategy, but the fact that they didn't point out that, hey, listen, we inherited a mess of an exit strategy, actually a lack of an exit strategy, and a timeline that was too soon. While for 2 months, our predecessor took his eye off the ball because he was fighting about the election results and fomenting an insurrection, by the way. This is something that the American public apparently did not have pointed out to them nearly enough, or else we wouldn't be dealing with this jackass holding a news conference, the likes of this. Maybe we'd have had a better exit strategy if we'd have had one that Biden could have inherited at all instead of, wait, that's the date? No, that's too soon. It's unsafe. We've got to push it back, which we had Afghanistan agree to until they finally were overtaken by Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and the Taliban said, no, get out. And, well, yes, it was messy. There was no strategy inherited to begin with, but the American public doesn't seem to have noticed that. And Democratic Party, the Biden administration, didn't push back on that. And, of course, we can't expect the media to do that because they're sitting there lapping this bullshit up right now. I have more. Back after this. The Ron Show on American One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn. All right, final segment here for the Ron Show, and I'm going to go over just some of the finer points, the broader takeaways from the Trump Mar-a-Lago press conference. I sort of went down the rabbit hole of his whole opening weave, the inane monologue that began that press conference. Since Meta has given up on fact-checking, about all we have left when it comes to anyone doing any fact-checking, is it just Daniel Dale? Is he the last guy? Daniel Dale at CNN, fact-checking from Trump's news conference yesterday.
Sure. So there was a lot of lying from the president-elect at this press conference, but I think the most dangerous part was an equivocation. It wasn't really a claim, but he was asked whether he thought there was a link between vaccines and autism, and he equivocated. He said, well, we have some brilliant people looking at this, and he talked about the increased prevalence of autism diagnoses. Look, there is no link between vaccines and autism. This notion has been discredited by study after study over decades. The idea that there is some connection came from a thoroughly discredited, in fact, scandalous, fraudulently altered study in the 1990s that should just be ignored, dismissed, again, because it was fraudulent. And so the idea that, well, we're just going to look into this, I think, is dangerous to consider because the idea is simply wrong. I'll pivot to some other topics. He talked, as usual, about tariffs, said under his first presidency, we took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China. That money was paid by Americans. It is American importers who pay the tariffs, not Chinese exporters. And many of those importers pass along the cost to U.S. consumers. He said no previous president had tariffs on China. That's wrong. He said there was no inflation under his own presidency, despite the tariffs, certainly lower than during the Biden presidency. But there was 8% cumulative inflation during his presidency, so not nothing. In talking about health, he also said, oh, Europe has lower mortality than us, or better mortality, and they don't use pesticides. Europe uses hundreds of thousands of tons of pesticides every year, so I'm not sure where he got that idea. And earlier in the press conference, Dana, he said over and over, I think 3 times, that during his presidency, there were no wars, like no wars, period, in the world. That is simply not true, a rewriting of history. One research institution said there were active armed conflicts in about 50 states in 2020, including, of course, civil wars in Yemen, in Syria, in Somalia. We had an active Israeli-Palestinian conflict, U.S. troops deployed in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and elsewhere. So the idea that this was a world at peace left by Donald Trump to Joe Biden, simply not true.
And he didn't even talk about, well, I guess that's where we step in to talk about the Panama Canal and Greenland and annexing Canada. I hesitate to invoke Adolf Hitler here. But Adolf Hitler talked a lot about needing more room for his country, national security reasons, etc., and so on. You know what? Instead of being that dour and that pessimistic, though, let's take the humorous point of this. Desi Leidig from last night's Daily Show on Comedy Central.
When Donald Trump won in November, it was largely on the promise of improving the everyday lives of American people, from fixing inflation after it was already fixed to fighting the nationwide crime wave that he made up. And today, in a press conference from Mar-a-Lago, Trump announced one of those common sense kitchen table policies that Americans have been waiting for.
Yeah.
We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
You can't make this up.
Yeah, let's do that. Why the hell not? Yeah, we have been so concerned about all the scary things that Trump's going to do. We forgot he's also going to do some really stupid things. I guess Gulf of America does have a ring to it, as in there was another horrific oil spill in the Gulf of America. But okay, fine. Let's rename the Gulf, I guess. Now let's focus on the price of eggs.
President-elect Donald Trump urging America's northern neighbor to, quote, merge with the U.S., saying many people in Canada love being the 51st state.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line.
Oh, my God.
And you take a look at what that looks like.
What? That would go all the way from the Arctic down to the Gulf of America. This is insane. Canada can't become part of America. That's the country I pretend to be from when I'm traveling abroad. But why does Trump want Canada so much? When he hears that Canadians love pouring gravy on their poutine, he knows they're not talking about
That's so gross.
poutine, right? By the way, this isn't the first time he's mentioned this. He's been tweeting about making Canada the 51st state for months now. Side note, I'm impressed that he currently knows there are 50 states, but surely Canada's not going to just take this. Prime Minister Trudeau, tell him what's up.
I intend to resign as party leader, as prime minister.
God damn it. God damn it.
I know.
Well, welcome to the United States, Canada. Locker rooms are over there. Our Wi-Fi password is HOCK2us69420. And you pay for health care now.
But wait, there's more.
But back to Donald Trump, who is now demanding to rename the Gulf of Mexico and take over Canada. Not to mention, a couple of weeks ago, Trump expressed interest in taking over the Panama Canal. Because why stop at just controlling birth canals?
Whoa!
But that's it, right? That's it. Now we can get back to the price of eggs.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security.
Donald Trump said he might use military force to take control of the Panama Canal and Greenland.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No, I can't assure you on either of those two.
What? He just got elected and he's going to invade Greenland? Look, I am no war expert. I'll leave decisions regarding our military to alcoholic Fox News hosts, but I am almost certain invading Greenland is insane. Insane. At the very least, it would be nice to have heard about this during the campaign. I mean, you had time to tell a 10-minute story about Arnold Palmer's shower penis, but not one story about bombing Greenland? That would have been good to know.
Okay, all kidding aside, and yes, that was very humorous, a fantastic take. Once again, my ex-sister-in-law texted me last night as I'm making dinner. She said, I know I'm a little late to this, but I started watching The Daily Show recently, and she essentially said, holy shit, they're actually a good news source, and by the way, it's entertaining and funny at the same time, only I'm kind of crying simultaneously. I'm like, yeah, no, I get it. You're a little late to The Daily Show thing. But I'll take it. I mean, seriously, I'll take it. You know, I started dating someone who isn't at all politically plugged in. Literally told me, and don't judge me for this, and I'm not judging him for this. He's never voted. And I'm going to work on that. Fear not. But, yeah, that's what we're up against. We're up against disinformation on steroids now. Thank you, Zuckerberg. We are up against already a sea of disinformation that comes from Fox News and Newsmax and OANN and RBSN. Did you know that existed? It's a thing. It's Right Side Broadcasting, talk radio, and yeah, and we have to cobble together this collection of people and voices and podcasts, and we have the Daily Show. And occasionally we can watch ABC, NBC, CBS News in the half-hour window that we're given each night and come away with a sobering look at what the world is right now. It's on fire. Ronald Reagan hailed from California. You'd have thought that him being the governor, he would have had some insight into what a future held for the state that he hailed from when it came to global climate. I mean, maybe not, but Jimmy Carter did. Jimmy Carter knew that we had to do something to diversify our energy sources. And maybe it was because he was president when we had, a global oil crisis. Oh, wait, that's still a thing now. And knew that we needed to transition away from our dependence on fossil fuels for foreign policy reasons and for climatological reasons. So I guess it all came to a head yesterday as I'm watching NBC News. Lester Holt giving me the story, the picture from a raging wildfire, one of many this year from California, the state that Ronald Reagan hailed from, the Ronald Reagan that succeeded Jimmy Carter as president of the United States and immediately took those solar panels off the White House. What kind of silly nonsense is that? And instead leaned in on, he came well before drill, baby drill, but he was very pro-drill. And the party of Reagan, the party of Palin, the party of Donald Trump is leaning in on drill, baby drill as the world catches fire. And the immigration scourge that Donald Trump and his MAGA acolytes rail against, having much to do with the climate issues that drill, baby drill, rots our hemisphere, the world. There's no zooming out to see a complete picture and connecting the dots with these folks. And now, because Meta is not going to fact check, it's going to be harder to combat their nonsense. And you hear how he speaks. Well, you heard and I heard, and can you believe that? Well, it's going to be harder to believe folks who are easy to dupe. Donald Trump is easy to dupe, but so are his voters. And Mark Zuckerberg said, it's not on us, man. We're out of this. It's going to be a tough next 4 years. There's no sugarcoating it, and there's no daily showing it to make it funnier and not as hard for us to handle. But here we are, and I guess we can just cross our fingers that we don't invade Canada, Panama, Greenland with any Hitlerian mindset running the show from Washington. So yeah, forgive me if I sound a little dystopian when I say this whole Orwellian 1984 thing, this whole discussion of Donald Trump and fascism and comparing him to Hitler, oh, nonsense, right? Well, here we are. And as long as I can be, here I am, 5 days a week, 9 a.m., 5 p.m. on America One Radio, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. Show notes, as always, everything you heard, we'll cite, ronshowatl.com. Have a good day.